Hello and welcome to an Arena FPS quick look. Now this is a game which isn't out yet, but last week we managed to get a pretty lengthy kind of beta preview where two streamers took the game and played it for a while, and the game is Overwatch. So a lot of people are excited for this, but there was a post a couple of days ago on the Overwatch subreddit where somebody was saying that nobody's actually making videos or content of concerns for the game, and everyone's just being maybe unduly optimistic about a game that nobody's really played yet. So we watched the live streams and we had quite a few things we wanted to kind of discuss. Okay, so first of all, in terms of concerns, one thing that a lot of team-based objective games have in common is side objectives. For example, in League of Legends you have the Baron buff, in Quake you have the quad damage and the resist, or the battlesuit even.
Or even just the armors and things like that.
Even just the armors. And what this does is, if there's an objective such as capture the flag, or in a MOBA it's pushing a lane, then having these side objectives which aid you in the main objective but are not necessarily required to win the game, they make the fights a little bit more dynamic. And one thing we both noticed on Overwatch is it was just complete zerg over the objective, like the main objective, whether it be the domination point or the actual cart. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
It's worth noting that as the game progresses, this might become the case, because it is beta. But what you don't want Overwatch to become, or at least what I wouldn't want Overwatch to become, is just a mess of people spawning, running straight to the cart or whatever the single objective point is, and just spamming their ultimates and their bullets just around this until they die, and repeating it, because that just doesn't make for fun gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, having side objectives creates so much more depth in the game, because you need to split up the team to allow the cart still be pushed, but also a majority of the team to go and contest over this objective. Timing is another important. Yeah, timing is another important aspect of it. Also, let's say if it was a quad damage type pickup, which for those of you that don't play Quake, shame on you, but it's 4 times. Is it 4 times in Quake, or is it 3 times?
I think no, it used to be 4 times. Now it's 3 times.
I think it's 4 in Reflex.
Yeah.
And that's quite a huge buff for the team. So you'd want to put that onto the appropriate character if something existed like that in Overwatch. These kind of objectives make a lot more kind of strategic decisions that can be made in a game, and it's just a lot less zergy. And I got the impression from a viewer's point of view that it might get quite boring quite quickly, where it's just kind of like fight over the cart like for 20 minutes and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, on the plus side, the cart does move, so that does create some, a change of scenery, a change of like what the map is like in the area you're fighting in and stuff. So that changes things slightly, but just having something where at certain points in the game you have to allocate team members to go off and fight for this buff, which could, I don't know, it could be something that regenerates your ultimate twice as quickly for the team or something, I don't know. But just something where you have to divert your attention from this one mess of bullets and go and do something else. It just creates more depth.
Yeah, definitely. And it would kind of change the pacing of the game as well, because at the moment the pacing seemed to be pretty much, whoever won the team fight, they move the objective forward slightly, or they capture the objective, and then there's another team fight, and then whoever won that kind of wins the next objective, and it just kind of just the same thing over and over. Whereas like if you had somebody with a power-up which give you more ultimates, it would allow them to win, maybe just keep pushing that objective for like maybe the whole duration of that buff, and then once that buff's worn out, then we'll go back to kind of a slightly different dynamic. So I just like the idea of dynamics being changed in a game, like rather than it being the same thing throughout. Shall we talk about the game looking quite ultimate heavy?
Yes, so that's another thing I was worried about when looking at this. I was worried the gameplay was going to become too reserved and turtly until you got to the point where you have your ultimate, because the ultimates are quite powerful from what we can see. So it looks like teams might just, which is, it does create team play and communication, where teams might hold back until they have their ultimates run out and try and hit them at the right times and stuff, and then that's basically the focus of the gameplay. But is that really how you want the game to be? I personally would like to see more, more combat going on, more interesting combat going on when the ultimates aren't up.
Yeah, and it seems like it's going to make most of the big plays in the game, like the game-defining plays, which are actually highlighted at the end, to be surrounding these ultimates, which seem to just be press Q and stuff happens, rather than like none of them seem to be hugely skill based. Maybe there are some which are more, like there's one where Zarya, I think it was, where you've got to kind of suck everyone into this certain point and then someone else can kill them off, but a lot of them just seem to be kind of fire and forget, and it seems kind of odd in a skill based FPS game. There's a lot of emphasis on this kind of one shot ability carrying the whole team.
So you kind of want, like, I mean, even with things like the quad damage in Quake, for example, if you consider that to be an ultimate, you still have to position yourself well because you're as fragile as you were before. You still have to hit your shots and things like that, whereas lots of the ultimates seem to be, if you can see an enemy, like something like McCree's ultimate where he seems to headshot everyone in his line of sight when he presses R, something like that is just a bit,
Yeah,
I don't know, it just seems to suck some of the skill out and just replace it with decision making, which it might be something that the Overwatch developers want. They might want it to be more about strategy and decision making, but you know,
it seems to
it's
kind
an
of
FPS. That should be the difference between it being a top-down MOBA and being an actual FPS, is that it should be more skillful than.
they seem to, yeah, like you're saying, they seem to be sacrificing mechanical skill for strategic timing, which is really not something that an FPS game kind of usually focuses on, or even that's usually not kind of what an FPS game does well. And I think this might actually be very much due to the fact that Blizzard isn't an FPS developer. They've developed RTS in StarCraft, which is very much a strategic game, and Heroes of the Storm, which is a MOBA. So both of these games are very much kind of the opposite design thinking of a normal FPS, where like everything's, I mean, obviously there's a lot of mechanical requirement in StarCraft, but a lot of strategic depth is really kind of the focus in those kind of games. So it might just be due to lack of experience making FPS games.
And there might be some heroes that are really skill based that counter some of the others, and it might just be that they're trying to give it so you have some heroes with ultimates that are quite easy to hit, and then some heroes that are more skillful but you get bigger rewards from. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't want to see it go the way where it's just press R to kill whatever's around you.
So there's abilities and ultimates, and the next kind of point plays into both of these, but what concerns me in any game is where there's an ability your opponent can do to you which there's nothing you can do in return. You know that chain grab thing? It's a little bit like Pudge, is it, in Dota?
Yeah.
So it seems to me that if you hit that, there's nothing the player who's got grabbed by it can actually do. They're just pretty much going to be dead because they've lost their positioning. And you could say, well, you can play around that by not being in the range of I can't remember his name, that character's ability. But it seems like having this kind of sphere of 20 meters around this character that you can never enter, because if a skillful player can hit that shot like 90% of the time, then, or even like 60%, then it really makes it hard to play around some characters when you get to the really high levels. Because obviously what we saw in this test was not very slow skill level play, but I'd imagine it's below average of what we'll see when good FPS players get into the game.
Yeah, and it's like what we said with the ultimates, it just turns the game into decision making and positioning as opposed to decision making, positioning and skill. Because I mean, the person who has to hit the shot has to be skillful, but if he hits it, there's nothing you can do. It's purely to defend against it would purely be a decision making and positioning kind of response.
Yeah, you've got to
you never want 100% that.
Like a good analogy is rocket bouncing in Quake Live or Reflex. So if you hit a rocket at someone's feet, it bounces them into the air, which gives you a better chance to hit that second rocket, which is kind of similar to the grab. But with the grab, it kind of creates this 100% likelihood of death almost, maybe about 90%. Whereas with a rocket hit to the feet that bounces them in the air, the player has to hit another rocket within the time that they're still in the air to make advantage of that initial bounce. So they've got to make multiple actions within a certain time to capitalize on their first hit, rather than just hitting once and that pretty much being the end of that engagement.
Yeah, and again, like I keep saying this, but it might be that that's what they want, but I wouldn't want to see that as someone who thinks like, because your analogy was perfect. You hit the first rocket, you have a higher percentage chance of hitting your second one, but you still have to aim it well, and you still have to dodge the rockets that they'll be sending back at you.
Yeah, exactly.
The player who's been hit by the rocket still has a chance to use movement and skills and his aim to get out of the situation.
And there's another character, I can't remember, I'm terrible with names, forgive me, but the one, the tank guy that charges you and knocks you down with a stun. And I feel that's like, I wouldn't say unfair, but I don't like those kind of mechanics in games where there's literally, if you get hit by an ability, your choices are taken away from you. I like games where both players always have a choice in what they can do in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds. And if your only choice is die and respawn, then I feel like that takes a lot of potential away from a game.
If your position's bad in Quake, you take a lot of damage and you might die from it, but
You can move, you can change your position.
Both players still have to be skillful for that to happen or not happen.
Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is visual clutter in the game, and yeah, do you want to hit us with that?
Yeah, so it's made by Blizzard. Blizzard are a big company; they can afford all the particle effects that they want, and they've done that. And it looks gorgeous when you're just watching someone playing, but it's still very like there's lots of really bright things going on in the game. There's lots and lots of effects, and with a game with this much strategy and decision making, you kind of need to be able to pick things out and make decisions based on that. But sometimes when you're looking at a fight, it's just a mess of colors and shapes, and it's hard to distinguish what's going on.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is maybe due to it being, well, what we saw was 6v6, and I feel maybe even 4v4 might suit this kind of game better, or 5v5 possibly, but just because there's so much going on and the time to kill seemed to be fairly low in certain circumstances, and I'm not sure whether kind of reducing the amount of players would kind of make the game a little bit more smoother, maybe even more strategic. Because
it definitely would make them more strategic. When there's too many players, the game just becomes run around. You see someone just unload shit.
Yeah, I think so. I think like less than 4 would be too few, but I think 4 might be a good spot. And I hope it seemed like in the beta that we saw that it was kind of predefined how many players were on a team, but I really do hope that it will be kind of a user setting maybe. I don't think there's going to be dedicated servers. So I don't know how that's going to work, but I do hope there's, like, if a competitive mode was to arise, that different number of teammates might want to be experimented with.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a ranked matchmaking mode where they're going to have a competitive team size. So I wonder what that's going to be.
Yeah. And yeah, I think we both feel that just reducing the amount of players on the screen would both probably help the performance for people with lower computers, but also just make the game more easy to pick out fights and easy to pick out targets. And I mean, if you look at any competitive Quake player, they have like all the graphics turned down because being able to pick out your target as quickly as possible is just super important. And when you've got a pretty but kind of almost messy looking game where all these effects going off and it's hard to pick out a target, then it makes the game inherently less competitive due to that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's something they need to work on, and I don't think it's going to be one of these things like with Quake where you can pick how much you want to see, because they've spoken in the past. When that whole FOV thing was going on, they didn't want people to adjust the FOV because it would be unfair on players who didn't know how to adjust the FOV. That's just a small thing, but if they considered that, I doubt they're going to let you change. How many particles you're seeing or the textures on the walls or anything like that, like lots of Quake games will.
Yeah, part of that was like the explodable like background stuff. Did you see that, like not ponchos, what they call pinatas and stuff? Like all those kind of, they're all cool, but they're not really necessary to the game.
Yeah, I'm watching a clip now of Farah firing rockets, and every single shot she does, there's a big circular burst of light that comes out of her gun that just takes up a whole chunk of the screen. Like the Torbjorn, when he reloads his gun, he puts his arm in front of the player character and pours something into like a completely unnecessary animation, which is great for fluff and for casual players, but they're going for a competitive game here, and it's kind of like, why is that happening?
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so next up we want to talk about the spawns a little bit, and this is something that that annoyed me quite a lot, but I think other people might see it as kind of a feature and a kind of standard of that kind of game. But I didn't like how at the beginning of the game it looked like the defending team just had a huge run to the cart, and then at the end of the game you have the attacking team with this huge run to the cart, and due to the respawn timer seemed to be pretty low. I don't know, I couldn't tell you for sure what it was in seconds. I can probably have some video up right now, but I feel like it kind of creates this dynamic where it's just boring for one team to just keep running across the whole map, like at certain parts of the game. You wanna?
Yeah, I mean, you could even put in things where teams can work on side objectives to get closer spawns or something, just something skill based where it changes the paradigm and stops spawning being so stagnant.
Yeah, and one way they seem to be tackling that was having this teleporter type thing, but that kind of requires certain team compositions every time to have that. And I don't really like, one character having like a teleporter and not everyone else, one character be able to make one. Because like in TF2, for example, the engineer, there's one engineer, there's not like, well, there's like 6 classes, 9 classes. Oh my god, I'm terrible.
There's 9 classes.
9, there we go. So in TF2 there's 9 classes, and like one of them's an engineer, so that's like 1 out of 9. But in Overwatch there's tons of them, and I don't think anywhere near that many have like that. I don't think there's the same ratio of teleports to the whole team. So that kind of frustrated me slightly just from watching it. And I think if I was playing on a team that didn't have that teleport, then having to run back to the cart, like 20-second respawn run time, it's like the old World of Warcraft like corpse running. It's not fun for anybody.
Yeah, and this isn't so much about competitive play as it is about regular pub play. It's like the better you do, the further you push the cart, the more boring your run is every time you die. It's just the same place you spawn every time, and then it's just a run to rejoin the fight, which, as we spoke about before, right now is just fucking about the objective. Far enough shots until you die, and then you have to run further again.
Yeah, and there was that one game where the attackers were doing a really good job of like near the end with the cart, but even though they got like a pentakill type thing or whatever it's called, hexakill, like one player made this amazing play, they couldn't actually finish off the objective. They were just kind of, because the run was so long to get back, as long as the defending team managed to pick off 1 or 2 players, it meant that they could just defend like right next to their base almost indefinitely. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know how to solve it. Maybe increasing run speed would actually fix it for both sides. So whoever has to do the corpse run can actually get back faster, regardless of what character we're on. I mean global run speed, not just individual characters. Maybe that would be a way of kind of helping the situation slightly. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but it's definitely an issue as it is right now, or at least for me as a player, I'd find it an issue.
Okay, so we've talked about most of the things that we thought have been kind of concerns from our perspective playing. I mean, we've both played a lot of FPS games. We both play a lot of arena FPS games in particular. Quake, War Tournament, Reflex, Diabotical, those kind of things. And they're just our concerns we've identified with the game. But obviously, like, there's some of the ones that the community's picked up, which was a HUD. Personally, I can't stand how the HUD is right now. Like, the health bar was too tucked away, and there's some things weren't visually clear enough on the HUD, and I doubt it's going to be one of those games where you can customize a HUD, such as Reflex or even Quake. So rather than just only talking about the negatives, let's bring up a few positives from the playtest, or the beta test we saw.
On the plus side, it's an incredibly polished game. Like, yeah. you just watch a video of it and everything just Blizzard have money, and it shows in this game. It just looks so nice. Like this, I really like the character models. I love the voice acting. I love the animations. It just looks great.
I mean, it's obviously a very different kind of game, but it reminds me of Hearthstone and the fact that Blizzard couldn't take a card game which no one else could really make popular at that point and make it into this multi-million-dollar franchise in Hearthstone, because of how pretty everything looked, like how much visual feedback there was, like the little at the end of the game, or the little kind of intricacy, I can't say that word, intricacies, that's the one, at the end of the game, or the intricacies, like the play of the match, and then the little voting card where it went to legendary, that even though it doesn't seem to do anything, all those little things kind of just make the game feel good.
Yeah, definitely. And we've ripped into it quite a bit in this video, but to be honest, if you consider most FPS games out there right now in the market, this is one of the better looking ones. It's got verticality, it's movement based, it's got interesting weapons, it's got interesting characters. It does look like a great game. There's just some small points that I think could make it better.
Yeah, I mean, we really like some of the rocket jumping and like the kind of tribes jetpack-ish character. Was it Farah?
Yeah, Farah. I'm really interested in playing Farah.
And also there seems to be really kind of strong team synergy element. I like how you can change classes after you die, and I like how, like, even though we did say it was a little bit of an issue, but I like how much team synergy plays into the combat. So it's just whether they could kind of polish the gameplay mechanics. They've got a lot of visual polish and a lot of audio polish, but the actual mechanics polish, I think, is something that maybe they've not finished yet. And obviously it looks really pretty.
And it's beta, so this is the time to be saying all these things.
I think it's technically alpha still. Beta doesn't come out until next week. And I don't think we'll get in because there's like 1 billion people in the queue. But if we do, we'll kind of do better, kind of more in-depth videos on it at some point. Cool. So that was kind of our Overwatch critique video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Obviously, you probably didn't because, you know, whatever. But I think it's good to identify issues with the game, even though it's kind of the most hyped game of the century. I think it's really important to look at every game objectively rather than just get excited about something that may have flaws, because every game's got flaws. Even Quake has flaws. Even Quake.
Whoa.
Well, I know. But, you know, you've got to be real here. So thanks for watching. We'll have more content for you very soon. There should be a news video coming up this weekend with Reflex and Quake Live patch updates. So look forward to that, and we'll talk to you later.